Choking during sex, a part of BDSM practice, is an erotic asphyxiation or breath control play for sexual arousal. It has now become mainstream. The definition of choking is a form of strangulation as it involves external pressure on the neck to restrict blood vessels and/or pathways rather than an internal blockage of airways to increase sexual arousal. The literature mainly focuses on male as choker and female as receiver due to this dynamic being most cases. And so, for the sake of consistency and abbreviation, I will stick with this cisgendered description. An example of choking, bondage, and sexual humiliation dates to Pauline Regue's 1954 erotica novel, The Story of O. This French novel was considered scandalous and published under a pen name. So how has choking in our modern age become a sadomasochistic norm? Choking's rise in popularity came from many sources. The 50 Shades of Grey movie, exhibiting choking and other kinks, sub-dom pornography, rape culture, media, examples, fan fiction, 17 magazine, women being socialized into submissive roles, heteronormativity of violence and ways that masculinity is performed, and a BDSM subculture, bondage, discipline, sadism, and masochism practices. Sexual choking is most common in the modern day pornographic sphere. The #1 media outlet for Pornhub yields thousands of choking videos with gendered titles such as "She loves throat fucking and choking," "18-year-old girlfriend loves being choked." According to the International Classification of Diseases, 10th revision, sexual paraphilias are disorders of sexual preference and include conditions such as fetishism, fetishistic transvestism, exhibitionism, voyeurism, pedophilia, sadomasochism, and multiple disorders of sexual preference. Currently, sexual behavioral patterns, inflicting pain, humiliation, or subjugation of another, are being depathologized and no longer viewed as diseases. However, since choking carries inherent risks, including the potential for serious injury, death, and mental health issues, I would encourage my clients to approach their choking kink with caution and communication between partners. It is essential for individuals to prioritize safety, clear communication, and mutual consent. Positive choking experiences need certain conditions, such as a trusted partner, consent, and communication before, during, or even after sex. In addition to encouraging safety, I will scan for underlying issues that may be driving my client's preferred kink, such as past sexual abuse, low self-esteem, giving into the partner's desire or the societal crowd when choking is not my client's desire, and insecure attachment style. I will also inquire about emotional experiences they derive from the act of choking or receiving choking. Examples: power, control, or powerlessness, how those emotions are serving them psychologically, and how they are not receiving those emotions from their outside life. Young adults at an impressionable age are more likely to be swayed by the media, and therefore, choking during sex is prevalent among young adults, with one study finding that 58% of women college students had been choked during sex. Choking, considered strangulation and smothering of the respiratory tract, is not always safe. The most common cause of death in autoerotic accidents was strangulation. Hanging was 8 cases, and only some had established safe words or safety gestures with partners. Participants consistently expressed a belief that the ways in which they and their partners engaged in choking were safe. These women in the study assumed choking was safe with a partner they trusted, but sometimes partners do not know how to make choking safe. Also, this study does not take into consideration women's assumptions about choking with a hookup they have not had time to develop trust with. With a hookup, a man would be more likely to objectify the woman and therefore be less sensitive towards her emotional and safety needs. There's a difference between those following the crowd or caving into a partner's request for choking, and those seeking out choking because they get sexually turned on by the act. Having uncontrollable sexual compulsions like frequent choking stem from childhood. According to some authors, 80% of those who suffer sexual abuse in childhood develop compulsive sexual behavior and sexual addiction in adulthood. These authors also note that poor family relationships in childhood lead to the development of uncontrolled sexual behavior in adulthood. Participants are acting out the pain, frustration, abuse, or neglect they hold onto through sexual acts. Those who sexually get turned on by being severely choked typically come from abusive households. The authors suggest that the development of autoerotic asphyxiation is associated with suffocation suffered in childhood in combination with other physical or sexual abuse. When someone pairs being choked or choking with sexual arousal, a deeper issue may be underlying the craving for submission or dominance in its purest form. They derive sadomasochistic pleasure from reenacting their trauma through kink. Reenacting their trauma gives them the feeling of control over their past. Some people find sadomasochism therapeutic and healing for their traumas, typically when they reverse the trauma role positions from receiver to enactor of abuse. Through taking on the dominant role, they are taking free agency over the abuse they may have suffered in childhood. From my previous research, many dominatrix women have had a domineering, authoritative father with narcissistic traits. In the narratives of choking, power, trust, control, and dominance all feature prominently in participant narratives of choking. Trauma play that switches the power roles could be empowering for one who carries victim wounding from the past. Participants would need to make sure they do not allow their trauma to viscerally take over them because this could lead to dangerous strangulation. There are mental and physical consequences to choking, especially for women. The impact of choking causes distress in many women. Sex characterized by fear, worry, threat, and/or anxiety may increase the risk for poor mental health. In our study, the relationship between a history of having been choked and overwhelming anxiety was present for women, but not for men. This may reflect women feeling and being more vulnerable to violence. Perhaps most women have a gut reaction against being choked because strangulation is one of the most common causes of femicide worldwide. Although choking during consensual sex is rarely fatal, people, nearly always women, are sometimes unintentionally killed from being choked. Being choked during sex can impact women's health in important ways. If sexual choking restricts breathing or reduces oxygen supply to or from the brain for sufficient time or with sufficient pressure, injury or death can result. Other potential consequences include anxiety, headaches, and depression. There are also neurophysiological alterations due to repetitive sexual choking. Therefore, choking can have dire consequences, including possible death, emotional disturbance, and neurophysiological alterations. As a woman, I can see why I instinctually have a reaction against sexual choking. People throw around the word sexual choking during our modern age because they do not understand the gravity of the act and what type of pressure it actually entails. Therefore, I would like to make clear that I am not referring to a light hold around someone's neck, pretend choking. I am referring to a firm grasp around the neck. The number one way women are killed by abusive boyfriends is through strangulation. It is difficult for me not to disapprove of medium to severe intensity choking when many men who choke get turned on by the woman momentarily being owned by him and belonging to him. For instance, Andrew Tate's ex-girlfriend said he liked to choke women during sex because he liked to feel totally in control of the woman and feel like he could take their life away at any second. He had his women wear tattoos of his name. This type of sexual ownership can become a master-slave dynamic, and I feel women have advanced too far to digress to sexual slavery. The man's need for total domination reminds me of how the main character O in the story of O is taken by her lover into a male sex cult where she is trained in various sexual and sadomasochistic acts. She is regularly stripped, whipped, blindfolded, and chained, and wears an iron ring as a sign to society that she is a sex slave. She also undergoes a surgery to have rings pierced into her labia by her lover's request and to receive a brand with his initials. Her love for him is turned against her. The more her free will is dimmed, the more he feels he has mastered her, until at the end he believes he has complete mastery over her. Today, males seeking domination over females in the bedroom seems outdated, as most women no longer take on traditional gender roles outside of the bedroom. Perhaps males seeking control of females in the bedroom is their subconscious way of having an illusory control over females in the outside world. This master-slave psychological sensation some people feel by choking leads me to the question, could bondage and choking be a gateway physical act for more psychologically harmful acts such as rape? Perhaps there indeed is a linkage between sexual choking and the acceptance of interpersonal violence and rape myth beliefs. When someone has a deadlock hold on another's throat, they have control over the other's life, and if they pass out, control over their body. A woman is defenseless against possible rape while being choked or while being unconscious. Choking can cause emotional disturbance and possible depression, but rape can also cause PTSD. Men at high percentages already feel an urge to rape naturally. 39% of men have fantasies about bondage and 30% about raping women. Among male college students, 51% indicated that they would rape a woman if they knew they would not be punished for it. According to 25% of respondents, male and female college students and women would enjoy rape provided that it was kept secret. If many young college males subconsciously have this desire for power and control through rape and have trouble curbing their impulses, then it is no wonder date rape occurs so frequently on college campuses. Choking without consent is often brushed over, but it is sexual assault. Choking has become mainly male-centric. Violence during consensual sex has become normalized, especially during casual sex arrangements. Because choking has become normalized and the meaning behind the word choking misrepresented as including a light hold, many think the act is acceptable and can be used without consent. If a high percentage of women or men are giving consent for being choked or allowing non-consensual choking, then this creates more of an acceptable landscape for other types of paraphilia, like video voyeurism. Video voyeurism is a crime due to lack of consent. Video voyeurism can include taking pictures or recording videos of the victim in a fitting room, gym, or WC, and taking pictures or filming underneath a person's clothing. Often, acts of video voyeurism go unnoticed by the victims. I believe choking perpetuates sexism. Androcentrism seems to be playing a hyper-masculine point of view at the center of one's enjoyment of choking. Being androgynous, I do not possess a strict feminine gender role. Choking attracts those who follow gender norms. Overall, links between power, control, gender dynamics, and stereotypical masculine and feminine roles were strongly in participant narratives and influenced their desire, or at least their decision to engage in choking. While most of the choked experiences were linked to positive feelings, others were described negatively as not pleasurable, uncomfortable, scary, or as neutral, such as accepting choking as part of a partner's pleasure rather than their own. From this description, there are many potential con feelings that could outweigh the pro feelings. Women also find choking to be scary, disgusting, adventurous, or erotic. While some women derive adventurous, erotic pleasure from it in the moment, the aftermath guilt in having allowed themselves to be degraded can cancel out the momentary pleasure. Many women do not consent to choking, and when they do, the majority derive pleasure from choking because the dominator is pleasured by it. Many women essentially cast aside their own needs and are not able to identify what is for themselves versus what is for the other. I not only believe sexism can be embedded in a male choking a female, but that many men who are given a certain privileged race or status over a specific woman will abuse this societal power by choosing to choke this woman without consent. Therefore, racism, gender privilege, and classism could exist within this specific entitled power dynamic. Women are more likely to want to voice consent, but the dominator feels the one asking for consent eliminates the thrill of the choking. By the dominator asking for consent, they are giving the other power in choosing the choking. The point of choking is to render the one receiving it as powerless. The act is done more for the psychological pleasure of the choker rather than for the one receiving. If women are not requiring the man to ask them for consent, then women are not listening to their own voice. In one study, when describing rough sex, cisgender women and transgender participants were more likely to write about consent, the importance of communication, or frankly, somewhat more vanilla-y kinds of things. OPM&x said cisgender men wrote about using hot wax or knife play or things that are a little further on the spectrum of rough. Women's general desire for consent will often be canceled out by many cisgender men's wish for rough sex. And rough sex is spontaneous. It does not wait for verbal words of consent. Individuals with higher levels of education or economic resources may be more aware of the potential risks and safety measures associated with sexual activities like choking. Therefore, this discrepancy in knowledge or resources based on varying socioeconomic backgrounds can contribute to unequal power dynamics. Education improves communication, and solid communication skills is vital for voicing self-protective needs in a choking dynamic. Also, maturity, often correlated to age, is an influential factor on whether choking has been performed safely. Young adults especially have not mastered open communication. Half of college students who had been choked reported that they had never, 21%, or only sometimes 32%, been asked for consent or if it was okay to be choked prior to being choked. Considering how prevalent choking has become, it is striking how few people know how to negotiate, communicate, or understand consent. Most participants, when describing when they would stop or signal to stop, cited not being able to breathe, physical changes such as blurry vision or lightheadedness, or a general discomfort and pain. Because of these uncomfortable and dangerous side effects, I would educate clients on the potential physical and emotional impacts of choking. Choking has adverse mental health outcomes for both men and women, but women in particular. Over 60% of women who had been choked reported overwhelming anxiety in the past 30 days. For both women and men, there were statistically significant associations between having been choked and being very sad, so depressed it was difficult to function, and very lonely. Since I'm a therapist, I feel it is my duty to relay the mental health consequences that is not publicly discussed in the BDSM landscape. I would inform clients of the safe ways to choke to ensure safety. Most indicated that pressure should be applied to the sides of the neck rather than the front of the neck, and noted the potential for damage if the pressure was applied elsewhere. Verbal communication during choking was uncommon. Verbal discussions of meaning of tap or position change were sometimes communicated verbally before or after the fact. Some participants were unclear on how to indicate they wanted the choking to stop, or else indicated that they had only been choked for short periods of time and had never considered how they would communicate to someone that they wanted to stop being choked. Since verbal discussion rarely happens during sexual activity, discussion prior to the activity is important. If my client enjoys frequent choking, I will not only scan for possible sexual abuse during childhood, but also an insecure attachment style. From my previous research findings as an attachment theory-based therapist, BDSM practitioners were a little more likely to have a secure or anxious attachment style than non-practitioners of BDSM. It is important to examine trends, why they are trending, who is promoting the trend, whom does the trend benefit, and is it a damaging or uplifting trend? Sexual choking is a trend promoted through many social media outlets like Snapchat and Instagram. Generation Z has made choking without consent a hookup trend. Although women and transgender individuals can be the chokers, most of the chokers are male and primarily serve the male desire. The dominator and receiver equate dominance, which is masculinity, with strangulation, which some would argue is a twisted version of true masculinity, being the protector. Because I discovered the choking statistics that many men on college campuses would rape a woman if they knew it would be kept a secret, I would not trust many men to choke without abusing that power. Example, not asking for consent, choking too hard, choking until she passes out, etc. The main body of literature does not mention female or transgender chokers because most of the choking is performed by cis males. Because choking is performed mainly by cis males, it is important to examine how sexism, privilege, and gender dynamics are fueling the enactment of choking. Choking is merely a reflection of prejudices and traditional gender values that are still strongly embedded in society